My brothers and sisters, when we speak about why jinn possess human beings, we must first understand that this is not simply a matter of fear, superstition, or old stories passed down through generations. It is a matter of the unseen world, the world that Allah has told us exists, and the one that interacts with our reality in ways we often ignore. But the truth is, the gateway for any form of evil, whether it comes from jinn, temptation, or even from our own desires, begins with one thing: the weakening of our faith. When the light of a man begins to fade, the shadows grow longer. And in those shadows, the whispers of Shaitan and the influence of jinn find their place. When your heart is filled with the remembrance of Allah, it becomes a fortress. No jinn, no whisper, no fear can penetrate it. But when that remembrance disappears, when your tongue forgets Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, and Allahu Akbar, the walls of that fortress begin to crumble. What happens then? The heart becomes empty, unguarded, and vulnerable. Just as a house without locks invites thieves, a heart without Dhikr invites darkness. And that is where the story of possession begins, not with magic or power, but with spiritual neglect. People often ask, why me? Why do these things happen to me? The truth is, the jinn don't attack the strong. They don't seek those who stand firm in prayer, who guard their tongues, and who remember Allah morning and night. They seek those who have forgotten who they are, those whose hearts are distracted by the world, by desires, by pain, by regret, by anger. These emotions are natural, but when they take control, they weaken the spiritual body just as disease weakens the physical one. And that's when the whispers grow louder, when the mind becomes clouded, and when fear replaces faith. You see, possession doesn't begin when the jinn enters. It begins when your faith exits. The moment you allow your relationship with Allah to weaken, you've already opened the door. And that door doesn't always open wide, sometimes it's just a crack. Skipping prayers once in a while, letting anger boil instead of forgiving, spending nights in sin and forgetting to repent, these are the small cracks that become gateways for something much greater. Allah tells us in the Qur'an, indeed, over my servants you will have no authority. Who are Allah's servants? Those who live with discipline, who strive to purify their hearts, who protect their eyes, their tongues, and their time. But when we abandon that discipline, we give authority to what should have none. We allow the whispers to take root, and then we wonder why our hearts feel heavy, why our sleep is disturbed, why our peace is gone. It is not always the jinn that begin it. Sometimes it is us who invite them through our carelessness. There is a reason Allah emphasized remembrance so often, because remembrance is protection. A person who remembers Allah cannot be possessed by the jinn. They may be tested, they may feel fear, but they will not be overtaken. The remembrance of Allah fills the heart with light, and light and darkness cannot coexist. So if you truly want to close the door to evil, then discipline your soul with Dhikr. Make it a habit. Make it a rhythm of your life. Let every heartbeat carry the name of Allah. The reality, my brothers and sisters, is that jinn possession is only one symptom of a much deeper problem, the weakening of our spiritual immune system. Just as the body falls ill when we stop caring for it, the soul becomes vulnerable when we stop nourishing it with prayer, Qur'an, and reflection. And when that happens, even a small whisper can grow into something destructive. You cannot live heedlessly and expect protection from a world you refuse to acknowledge. There are people who chase every solution: amulets, charms, healers, but they forget the real protection lies not in what you wear or drink, but in who you are when no one is watching. The strongest ruqya is not someone else's recitation over you. It's your own voice saying Ad, hu billahi min ash-shaytan irajam, with conviction. It's your own tears falling in sujud, begging Allah for protection. It's your own heart realigning itself with faith. That is where true healing begins. We live in a world of distractions. Our devices, our schedules, our endless chasing of success, they all drain our focus, leaving little time for reflection. And in that emptiness, the jinn find ease of access. Because the human being without focus is a human being without defense. This is why the Prophet taught us du'as for every moment before eating, before sleeping, before entering the bathroom, before stepping outside. Why? Because every moment you remember Allah, you are declaring that this space, this body, this heart belongs to Him alone. And when you make that declaration, no other creation can claim you. But when you live without discipline, sleeping through Fajr, forgetting Qur'an, filling your heart with music and heedlessness, you are spiritually asleep. And a sleeping person doesn't defend their home when a thief enters. The thief doesn't need your permission. He just needs your absence. Likewise, the jinn don't need an invitation, only your heedlessness. And that's the painful truth. We often look for someone else to blame, when the first step of protection begins with ourselves. Strengthen your connection with Allah and see how every other fear fades. The one who truly believes that Allah is Al-Qawi, the all-powerful, will never fear the power of the jinn. The one who knows that Allah is Al-Hafiz, the protector, will never feel unguarded. Sometimes, possession is not just literal, it is emotional, psychological, or spiritual. You may not be possessed by a jinn, but you might be possessed by your desires, your anger, your laziness. These are also forms of captivity. When you let the nafs control you, when you let undisciplined habits shape your life, you are giving up your freedom. And that is exactly what evil desires a soul that no longer fights for light. So if you want to be free, if you want to protect yourself, then bring back the light of discipline. Pray, even when you don't feel like it. Read Qur'an, even when you're tired. Remember Allah, even when the world tells you to forget. Because every act of discipline builds a wall between you and darkness. Every moment of remembrance drives away what seeks to harm you. And when that light shines bright again, when your heart is alive with the remembrance of Allah, even the jinn know they have no place there. They flee from the one who stands firm in faith. They flee from the one who walks with purpose. They flee from the one whose heart beats with La ilaha illa Allah. So protect your heart, guard your faith. Keep the light of a man burning no matter how dark the world gets. Because when the heart is full of Allah, there is no room left for fear. There is no room left for the jinn. There is only peace. My brothers and sisters, one of the greatest deceptions of our time is that we confuse tiredness with a lack of discipline. We tell ourselves we are exhausted, we are burnt out, we are done. But in truth, we are not tired, we are undisciplined. We have lost control over our time, our energy, and our purpose. We have allowed laziness to disguise itself as fatigue. We say we can't wake up for Fajr because we're too tired, but we scroll through our phones till 2 a.m. We say we can't read Qur'an because our schedule is too busy, but we spend hours watching meaningless videos. It's not tiredness, it's misplaced energy. It's not fatigue, it's a lack of control. And when you live without control, you open yourself to chaos, physical, emotional, and yes, even spiritual chaos that allows darkness to enter. The truth is, the jinn do not possess the strong. They possess the careless. They find their way not through power but through opportunity. And where do they find opportunity? In the lives of those who have lost structure. When a person no longer guards their time, when their days are filled with distractions and their nights with negligence, their heart becomes weak. Because discipline is not just about doing what is right. It is about protecting yourself from what weakens you. Every time you delay obedience, every time you surrender to laziness, you are teaching your soul to accept defeat. Allah created us with incredible potential, but potential without discipline leads nowhere. You may have the heart to do great things, but without consistency, you'll remain stuck where you are. Even the act of worship requires structure. Prayer has fixed times, fasting has fixed hours, zakah has fixed proportions, Hajj has fixed days because discipline is a part of faith. It is what shapes your connection with Allah. When you become undisciplined, you not only lose control over your worldly life, you lose grip on your spiritual one too. Think about how the Prophet lived. His days were planned around the remembrance of Allah. His sleep, his meals, his social life, his rest, everything had purpose and moderation. He didn't allow his emotions or his body to dictate his faith. That is what we are missing today. We live reactively, not proactively. We wake up late, rush through the day, and only remember Allah when calamity hits. And then we wonder why we feel spiritually empty, why we feel attacked, why we feel lost. It's not always that something external is harming us. Sometimes it's the internal neglect that opens the door. When you stop being disciplined, your nafs takes over, and the nafs, if left uncontrolled, becomes your greatest enemy. It whispers comfort when you need effort, excuses when you need action, and delay when you need decisiveness. And every time you give in, you're feeding weakness. You are teaching yourself that surrendering to laziness is easier than striving for excellence. That's when your spirit loses its sharpness, and when that happens, even the smallest whisper from Shaitan feels overwhelming. Look around you. The most successful people in this world, whether in faith or in worldly matters, are not necessarily the most intelligent. They are the most disciplined, the ones who wake up early, who prioritize, who remain consistent. They don't allow their emotions to rule them. And this is exactly what faith teaches us: self-control. Fasting, for example, is not just about hunger. It's about disciplining your desires. Salah is not just about movement. It's about structuring your day around Allah. Every act of worship is training for discipline. But when we treat worship as a burden instead of a habit of the soul, we lose its purpose. You see, the undisciplined heart becomes easy prey. Because when you don't control yourself, something else will control you. If not your willpower, then your habits. If not your remembrance, then your forgetfulness. If not your worship, then your distractions. And this is where many people unknowingly invite the darkness they later fear. The jinn, the whispers, the anxiety, they all feed off instability. They find comfort in chaos. When your life is chaotic, your energy scattered, your intentions divided, you are spiritually exposed. But when your life is orderly, when your routine revolves around Allah, the darkness cannot find a place to rest. And this is why discipline is not just about time management. It's about soul management. Every time you delay your prayer, you weaken your spiritual defense. Every time you give up Qur'an for entertainment, you trade light for darkness. Every time you skip a good deed out of laziness, you chip away at your own protection. And when enough of those pieces fall away, you become spiritually hollow. The jinn don't enter through walls. They enter through emptiness. We live in an age where convenience has made us weak. Everything is instant food, entertainment, even validation. We have lost the ability to wait, to strive, to be patient. And yet, true spiritual strength comes from patience and consistency. You can't expect Allah's help if you can't discipline yourself to seek it. You can't expect peace when you refuse the practices that bring it. Discipline may feel hard, but it's the path to freedom. Laziness feels easy, but it's the path to bondage to your desires, to your fears, and to the whispers that take advantage of your weakness. The undisciplined person wakes up tired not because their body is exhausted, but because their soul is restless. There's no purpose, no direction, no fulfillment. They waste their energy on what doesn't matter. And when it comes time for what truly matters, prayer, worship, growth, they have nothing left to give. That is why we feel tired even after sleeping for hours. Because rest without purpose doesn't refresh the soul. What refreshes the soul is alignment when your actions match your faith, when your time serves your Creator, when your life moves with intention. And let me tell you something, discipline is not built overnight. It's a struggle, a daily jihad against your lower self. It's saying no when your desires say yes. It's standing for prayer even when you want to stay in bed. It's choosing Qur'an over your phone. Every small act of control strengthens your spirit. Every moment of self-restraint builds your protection. The Prophet said, asterisk, the strong one is not the one who can wrestle others, but the one who controls himself in anger. Asterisk, that is true discipline mastery over the self. When you start disciplining yourself for Allah, you begin to feel a power that no worldly force can shake. Your prayers become lighter, your heart becomes calmer, your fears begin to fade, because discipline brings clarity. It removes the fog of confusion that makes you vulnerable to every negative thought or influence. A disciplined believer knows when to say no, when to step back, and when to push forward. That kind of clarity terrifies the jinn and strengthens the soul. So, my brothers and sisters, ask yourself, are you really tired, or are you just undisciplined? Because the one who lives with purpose will always find energy. The one who remembers Allah will always find peace. The one who is consistent in obedience will always find protection. Stop waiting to feel ready. Discipline is not about feeling, it's about commitment. Start small, one prayer on time, one page of Qur'an, one moment of reflection. Then build from there. And as you do, you will notice something change. Your heart will feel lighter, your thoughts clearer, your fears smaller. The darkness will fade, not because it disappeared, but because your light became stronger. And that is the secret. When you become disciplined for Allah, no jinn, no whisper, and no force of evil can control you. You control yourself through Him. Discipline is not punishment, it's protection. It's the bridge between weakness and strength, between fear and faith. And once you cross that bridge, you'll realize you were never tired. You were just waiting to wake up. My brothers and sisters, one of the greatest truths we often overlook is that emotional turmoil weakens our spiritual foundation. When your emotions spiral out of control, when pain, anger, jealousy, or fear consume your heart, you become vulnerable not only to worldly harm, but to spiritual harm as well. The jinn, the whispers of Shaitan, they feed off chaos. They find openings not in your body, but in your heart, when it is restless, wounded, and distant from remembrance. The reality is, when your heart is at peace, nothing can shake you. But when it's in turmoil, you lose balance, and the unseen world senses that imbalance. Many people don't realize that spiritual weakness begins with emotional instability. When you're constantly upset, worried, or resentful, your heart stops remembering Allah the way it should. The Dhikr becomes heavy on the tongue, the Qur'an feels distant, and prayer feels forced. Why? Because your emotions occupy the space that should belong to faith. A heart that's full of anxiety or anger has no room left for tranquility, and that tranquility is what protects you. Jinn do not overpower the strong. They influence those who are spiritually weak, and emotional imbalance is often their doorway. When you hold grudges, when you allow sadness to become despair, when you let hatred replace forgiveness, you are not only harming your mental peace, you're harming your spiritual shield. Every negative emotion that lingers becomes a crack in your protection. It's like leaving a door half open in a storm and wondering why the wind keeps entering. Allah tells us in the Qur'an, asterisk, verily, in the remembrance of Allah do hearts find rest. Asterisk, that rest is not just peace of mind, it's protection. A calm heart cannot be shaken by whispers, but a restless one can. Emotional control isn't about suppressing feelings, it's about guiding them with faith. Islam doesn't ask you to feel nothing. It asks you to feel everything, but in a way that leads you closer to Allah, not away from Him. When you cry, cry to Allah. When you feel anger, restrain it for His sake. When you feel hurt, seek healing through His words. Every emotion, when directed correctly, strengthens you instead of weakening you. But when you ignore your emotions or feed them with ego and resentment, you give power to what seeks to harm you. Shaitan loves anger because it blinds the heart. He loves sadness because it isolates the soul. He loves jealousy because it destroys relationships. He loves fear because it makes you forget the power of Allah. When these emotions dominate your life, your heart loses focus and your soul loses discipline. And that is when the whispers grow louder, when the nightmares start, when your thoughts become heavy, and when you feel like something unseen is controlling you. My dear brothers and sisters, understand this clearly. No jinn, no evil eye, no dark force can control a heart that is at peace with Allah. When you are emotionally balanced and spiritually aware, you stand like a mountain. The winds may blow, but they cannot move you. The moment you start reacting impulsively, losing patience, drowning in self-pity, or holding on to anger, you make yourself small, and darkness feeds on that smallness. Sometimes people say, I feel something heavy, I feel anxious, I feel like I'm being watched. And while these feelings can be real, the cause is often not just external. It is the emotional state inside. You can't purify your soul if your heart is filled with bitterness. You can't seek peace while holding on to grudges. The jinn and shaitan take advantage of spiritual disorder, and emotional turmoil is the easiest form of disorder to create. It's invisible, silent, and gradual. That's why the Prophet taught us not just to pray, but to forgive, to smile, to stay calm, to control anger, to have sabr. Because every act of emotional discipline strengthens your spiritual defense. Forgiveness is not a weakness, it's protection. Patience is not passivity, it's armor. Gratitude is not just manners, it's light that repels darkness. These emotional virtues build a shield that the unseen cannot penetrate. When you go through heartbreak, loss, or betrayal, it is natural to feel pain, but don't let pain lead to despair. Despair is the tool of Shaitan. He whispers, you're alone, no one understands, there's no hope. But the believer answers, Allah is with me, Allah understands, Allah will heal me. This mindset changes everything. You may still hurt, but that hurt no longer weakens you. It purifies you. Remember, emotional strength doesn't mean you never break. It means that when you break, you turn to Allah to rebuild. The one who cries to Allah is not weak. The one who complains to people but forgets Allah is the one who truly suffers. Emotional discipline is not about pretending everything is fine. It's about knowing where to turn when it's not. When you surrender your emotions to Allah, you are no longer a prisoner of them. We often underestimate how connected our emotions are to our spiritual state. When you live with constant stress and anxiety, you're sending your heart signals of instability. That instability weakens your connection to Allah. But when you begin to regulate your emotions through prayer, remembrance, and reflection, you build peace from within. And peace is not just a feeling. It's energy that radiates protection. Darkness cannot exist where there is inner light. Even when the jinn attempt to whisper, they retreat from a heart that is firm in trust, because that heart remembers that nothing happens without Allah's permission. And this belief, this conviction, is what drives away fear. It reminds you that the unseen cannot harm what Allah has protected. Your tears, your struggles, your pain, they are not weaknesses. They are tests that polish your soul. But only if you respond with faith. Emotional turmoil often begins when we seek control over what was never ours to control. We get angry at what people did to us, anxious about what may happen tomorrow, jealous over what others have. But the moment you release control and submit to Allah's plan, peace returns. You stop trying to manage outcomes and start trusting the one who already knows them. That surrender is the most powerful emotional discipline of all. Don't let emotions be your master, let them be your messenger. If you're feeling anger, it's telling you something needs restraint. If you're feeling sadness, it's reminding you to seek comfort in Allah. If you're feeling jealousy, it's showing you where gratitude is missing. Every emotion is a call to action, not a prison. And once you respond to emotions through remembrance and discipline, your heart becomes unshakable. So if you feel spiritually heavy, emotionally drained, or mentally overwhelmed, pause and reflect. What emotion have I allowed to control me? Is it anger? Is it fear? Is it guilt? Then take that emotion and bring it to Allah. Cry to Him, speak to Him. Surrender it to Him, because the moment you do, you take back your strength. The jinn cannot stay where Allah's name is sincerely called. The whispers cannot exist in a heart that is busy remembering its creator. You are stronger than you think, but your strength will only appear when your emotions bow to faith. Don't let a temporary feeling destroy eternal peace. Don't let a moment of anger invite a lifetime of regret. Guard your heart not just with prayers, but with forgiveness, patience, and gratitude. These are the shields that the unseen cannot penetrate. When your heart is calm, your soul becomes unshakable. And when your soul is unshakable, no jinn, no whisper, no fear can possess it. Because peace is the power that darkness cannot stand before. My brothers and sisters, we often misunderstand the nature of the battle we are in. When we hear about jinn, possession, or unseen forces, many immediately imagine something physical, something that grabs, hurts, or controls the body. But this battle is not physical. It is spiritual. It is unseen against unseen. It is a war not for your body, but for your heart, your will, and your connection with Allah. The jinn don't want your limbs. They want your focus. They don't seek to break your bones. They seek to break your trust in Allah. They don't need to chain your body. They want to chain your soul, and that's what many people don't realize. The jinn are not powerful by themselves. They draw power from your weakness, from your fear, from your heedlessness, and from your disconnection from Allah. A person who lives with remembrance, who guards their prayers, who constantly renews their faith, they are untouchable. The jinn cannot cross the boundary of Allah's protection. It is like a fortress surrounded by divine light. But when that light fades, when the remembrance of Allah disappears from your life, when sin becomes easy and prayer becomes heavy, then cracks begin to form in that fortress. And through those cracks, darkness finds its way in. This is why Allah tells us in the Qur'an, indeed, over my servants you have no authority. The jinn have no control over the believers, unless the believers hand over control themselves. When you stop remembering Allah, when you lose discipline, when your heart becomes consumed by worldly desires, you are giving away your own protection. You are lowering your own guard. The jinn don't break through your defense. You drop it yourself. This is not a battle that can be fought with strength or medicine or force. It is fought with faith, remembrance, and discipline. The Prophet told us that even a simple recitation of Ayatul Kursi before sleep can protect a person throughout the night. Why? Because Ayatul Kursi reminds you of who truly holds power, Allah. And when you sleep under that belief, the unseen fears you, because your faith stands as a barrier. When you wake up with the remembrance of Allah, when your tongue begins the day with Bismillah, the unseen knows it cannot touch you. But when you wake up with the world in your heart, with complaints instead of gratitude, that is when your shield weakens. We often think the jinn attack suddenly, but in reality, their influence grows slowly. It begins with heedlessness. You stop praying on time. You stop reading Qur'an. You neglect your does. You allow anger and envy to grow. You start to entertain sins, small ones at first, until they become habits. And each one of those habits removes a layer of your protection. The jinn wait for those moments. They wait for the human to forget who they are, someone honored by Allah, someone created in the best form, someone whose sujud terrifies the devils. This is why we must stop thinking of this battle as something to fear, because fear feeds them. Fear gives them strength. When you fear them more than you fear Allah, you have already surrendered. You've shifted your trust from the Creator to the creation. But when you remember that they too are creations of Allah, limited and powerless without His permission, your heart stands firm. The moment your heart says, Allah is my protector, Their power vanishes like dust in the wind. Think of the heart as a battlefield. One side is light, the remembrance of Allah, the Qur'an, the angels, the peace that comes from faith. The other side is darkness, sin, anger, lust, fear, and heedlessness. Every time you commit a sin, you give ground to the darkness. Every time you remember Allah, you reclaim it. The battle is constant and it is invisible, but every single act of remembrance is a victory. Every time you say Astaghfirullah, you drive away the whispers. Every time you recite Qur'an, you burn away their influence. Every time you fall into sujud, you declare war against everything that seeks to harm you. My brothers and sisters, the most powerful weapon you have is not your voice, your body, or your strength. It's your heart. When your heart is filled with faith, no darkness can overcome it. Even if the entire unseen world tried to harm you, they could not touch a heart illuminated by the light of Allah. That is why the Prophet said, "The believer's heart is the throne of the most merciful." Can anything evil sit where Allah's mercy resides? Of course not. So guard that throne, keep it pure, keep it alive with remembrance, because the moment you neglect it, you allow something else to sit there: fear, anger, despair, or the whispers that seek to control you. The jinn, like humans, observe patterns. They notice what weakens you. If they see you abandon prayer every time you're sad, they'll make you sad more often. If they see you lash out in anger, they'll whisper anger into your heart. If they see that fear controls you, they will magnify fear until it drowns you. But if they see you respond to pain with patience, to fear with du'a, to anger with forgiveness, they retreat. They cannot harm a heart that turns every weakness into worship. You see, this battle is not about strength. It's about awareness. Shaitan and his allies don't need to destroy you. They only need to distract you, because a distracted believer is already defeated. When you forget why you were created, when your days are filled with heedlessness, when your nights are empty of prayer, you have already given them what they want. A believer who has forgotten Allah. But the moment you turn back, the moment you whisper, Ya Allah, everything changes. The battle shifts instantly, because Allah says, asterisk, remember me, and I will remember you. Asterisk, imagine that the creator of the heavens and the earth remembers you by name when you remember him. What jinn or devil could harm someone remembered by Allah? There are people who live in constant fear of possession or unseen attacks. They visit countless healers, they read books, they burn incense, they chase physical solutions. But the true cure is spiritual. The heart that remembers Allah is impenetrable. You don't need to chase protection. You need to become protection. Your presence, your Dhikr, your sincerity. They are enough to make the unseen flee. Light does not fear darkness. Darkness fears light. When you say Bismillah, before every action, you are declaring that Allah is with you. When you pray on time, you are building a wall around your soul. When you forgive someone who wronged you, you are cutting off the ropes of hatred that jinn love to pull. When you wake up in the last third of the night and cry to Allah, you are surrounding yourself with an army of angels. This is how you fight, not by shouting at the unseen, but by humbling yourself before the unseen Lord. The beauty of this battle is that you never fight alone. Every time you seek refuge in Allah, He protects you. Every verse you recite, every tear you shed in repentance, every act of patience, it all brings divine protection closer. You may not see it, but you can feel it. That peace that settles in your heart after sincere prayer, that strength that rises in you when you remember Allah after fear, that is the victory of faith over darkness. So never let anyone make you feel powerless. You are not powerless. You are not a victim. You are a believer. The one who says La ilaha illa Allah with conviction is more powerful than any unseen force. The jinn may whisper, but they cannot control you unless you hand them the keys through neglect or fear. Take those keys back. Guard your prayers. Guard your Dhikr. Guard your heart. This battle is not fought with muscles. It's fought with sujud. It's not won with anger. It's won with patience. It's not conquered with fear. It's conquered with faith. And when you understand that, the unseen becomes powerless before you, because the one who carries the light of Allah within him walks through the darkness untouched. And that, my brothers and sisters, is when you truly realize no jinn, no whisper, no shadow can harm the one whose soul is anchored in remembrance, whose heart beats with faith, and whose tongue lives with Allah. My brothers and sisters, fear is a natural part of being human. We fear what we cannot control, what we cannot see, what we do not understand. And when it comes to the unseen world, the jinn, the whispers, the unknown, that fear can grow into something paralyzing. But here's a truth that many forget. Fear, when disciplined by faith, becomes power. It becomes clarity. It becomes the very force that draws you closer to Allah. Fear in itself isn't the problem, undisciplined fear is. Fear that leads you to panic weakens you, but fear that leads you to sujud strengthens you. When fear submits to faith, it transforms into courage. Every one of us will face moments when fear creeps into our hearts. The sound you can't explain, the feeling of being watched, the nightmares, the anxiety, they make you feel small, helpless, even trapped. But those who live in the remembrance of Allah understand something deeper. Fear only controls the one who forgets who truly controls everything. You see, the jinn and the whispers of Shaitan thrive on fear. It's their tool. When they can make you afraid, they can make you forget that you have Allah. But when you remember Him, when your heart beats with the certainty that no harm can reach you except by His permission, fear loses its grip. Discipline is what transforms this fear into faith, because discipline teaches your heart how to respond. The undisciplined person reacts. The disciplined believer reflects. The undisciplined person feels fear and runs away. The disciplined believer feels fear and runs to Allah. That's the difference. When you are disciplined in your worship, when prayer is part of your routine, when Dhikr flows naturally from your lips, when Qur'an is your daily nourishment, your heart learns not to panic. It learns to trust, because discipline creates familiarity with Allah, and familiarity with Allah is the antidote to fear. When you consistently engage in acts of worship, your soul becomes anchored. The waves of life may hit, but they cannot move you. Fear comes, but it cannot dominate you. Because your heart has already been trained, it knows where to turn. That's what discipline does. It trains the soul to stay firm when the world shakes. It teaches you not to let temporary emotions make permanent decisions. It keeps you grounded in the truth that Allah is Al-Hafiz, the protector, Al-Qawi, the most powerful. And once your heart truly believes that, fear becomes nothing more than a passing wind. It's easy to speak about faith when life is calm, but the real test comes when fear is real, when you feel something strange, when you hear whispers, when your dreams become heavy, when your peace is disturbed. That's when you discover what kind of discipline lives within you. Do you turn to the Qur'an, or do you run to your phone? Do you seek refuge in Allah, or do you drown in panic? That's where the separation lies between those who control fear and those who are controlled by it. Understand this: the jinn cannot harm a believer who remembers Allah. They can whisper, they can frighten, but they cannot harm. Allah's remembrance is like a light that burns them, and they flee from it. They thrive in darkness, the darkness of heedlessness, the darkness of despair, the darkness of disobedience. When your life is illuminated by Dhikr, by Qur'an, by prayer, their influence burns away. But that illumination doesn't come by accident, it comes from discipline. You have to build it daily, through effort, through consistency. Because the disciplined believer doesn't wait for fear to appear to start remembering Allah. They remember Him always, and that remembrance protects them before fear even arrives. Fear is also a mirror. It reveals what is missing in your spiritual structure. If you fear the unseen more than you fear disobeying Allah, then your discipline is misplaced. If you fear loneliness more than missing Fajr, your priorities need realignment. True discipline teaches you to fear only Allah, not His creation, because once you fear Allah alone, everything else that used to terrify you loses power. That's why the Prophet said, "Know that if the whole world gathered to harm you, they could not harm you except by what Allah has decreed." When you live with that understanding, fear becomes a servant of your faith, not a master over it. But how do we reach that point? It starts with habits. You train the heart the same way you train the body, with repetition and consistency. Pray even when you don't feel like it. Make Dhikr even when you're distracted. Read Qur'an even when your mind is tired. Every time you discipline yourself to obey Allah despite the struggle, you are strengthening your soul. You're teaching it to focus under pressure, to find calm in chaos. And that spiritual stability terrifies the unseen, because the disciplined believer walks with light, and light exposes what darkness tries to hide. Fear thrives on imagination. It grows in silence, in overthinking, in neglect. But when you replace fear with remembrance, imagination turns into awareness. You begin to see that what once scared you was never truly in control. You realize that fear was meant to remind you of your dependence on Allah, not to enslave you to anxiety. The believer's heart says, "Yes, I feel afraid, but my fear belongs to Allah alone." That shift changes everything. You stop seeing the jinn as powerful and start seeing your faith as unshakable. There are people who live their entire lives afraid of what the unseen might do, but rarely consider what heedlessness already does to their souls. They seek protection from the jinn, but not from sin. They fear whispers, but not their own disobedience. This imbalance happens when discipline is missing. When you discipline your faith, your fear becomes selective. You no longer fear what Allah controls. You fear disappointing Him. You no longer fear darkness. You fear losing His light. That is when your heart transforms. That is when you begin to walk with strength, dignity, and peace. Remember, fear itself is not evil. Even the prophets felt fear. Musa feared when facing Pharaoh, yet he stood firm because his fear was disciplined by faith. The difference between us and the prophets is not that they felt no fear, it's that they never allowed fear to paralyze their trust in Allah. That's what we must learn. Let your fear remind you to pray. Let it drive you to Qur'an. Let it push you closer to Allah. That is what it means to turn fear into faith. And when you start living this way, something beautiful happens. The things that once terrified you start to lose meaning. You hear a sound at night, but instead of panic, you say, Bismillah. You feel anxious, but instead of letting it control you, you take a deep breath and recite Ayatul Kursi. You feel alone, but instead of despair, you whisper, Hasbun Allah, Huwa Ni'mal Wakil. These small acts of remembrance are not just words, they are declarations of discipline. They are signs that your heart no longer bows to fear, it bows to Allah. When fear meets discipline, peace is born, because fear without faith leads to panic, but fear with faith leads to submission. And in submission, there is peace, the kind of peace that no darkness can shake, no whisper can disturb, and no jinn can invade. Discipline doesn't erase fear, it gives it direction. It channels it toward Allah, where it is transformed into strength. So, my brothers and sisters, if fear lives in your heart tonight, don't run from it, train it. Teach it to bow to faith. Discipline your soul with prayer, with remembrance, with consistency. Make your fear a tool that strengthens your connection with Allah, not one that distances you from Him. Because once you learn to discipline your fear, you will realize something profound. The jinn do not flee from your voice. They flee from your conviction. They flee from the heart that knows Allah is enough. And when that conviction settles in your soul, you will understand that fear was never your enemy. It was the reminder that led you back to your faith, to your discipline, and to your Creator. My dear brothers and sisters, there comes a moment in every person's life when they must decide what controls them, the unseen or the unseen controller of all things. You were not created to be enslaved by fear or whispers or by your own exhaustion. You were created with purpose, with dignity, and with a divine strength that too many people have forgotten. We live in a time when people say, I'm tired. Tired of struggling, tired of fighting, tired of believing. But the truth is you're not tired. You're undisciplined. You've allowed the noise of this world, the distractions, the desires, and the fears to take your focus away from the one who gave you purpose. And when purpose fades, power fades. That's when the whispers get louder and your soul begins to tremble. But understand this, you are not weak. You are not helpless. You are not a victim of the unseen. You are the creation that Allah honored above all others. The jinn were commanded to bow before your father, Adam, not to control his descendants. When you live without purpose, you forget this divine hierarchy that the jinn were created to test you, not to terrify you. The moment you reclaim your purpose, you reclaim your power, because when your heart is aligned with Allah, no unseen force can overpower you. Purpose gives direction to your soul. It tells you who you are and what you were made for. Without it, you drift lost, confused, and vulnerable. The jinn exploit that confusion. They thrive on emptiness, on purposelessness. When you live without Dhikr, without Qur'an, without consistency, they whisper more easily. But when your life revolves around a clear purpose to worship Allah, to better yourself, to serve others, the whispers lose their weight. Purpose acts like armor. It doesn't stop the attacks, but it absorbs them. You still hear the noise, but it no longer defines you. You still feel the pressure, but it no longer breaks you. And here is where discipline becomes the key that unlocks everything. You cannot live with purpose if you live without discipline. It's easy to say, I want to be close to Allah, but closeness requires consistency. It's easy to say, I want peace, but peace demands sacrifice. Discipline is what connects intention to reality. It turns your purpose from words into life. You can't claim to have purpose if your life doesn't reflect it. Discipline is the bridge that carries you from desire to destiny. Without it, your dreams remain ideas, your faith remains shallow, and your soul remains restless. Look around and you'll see people chasing peace in everything but obedience in comfort, in entertainment, in distraction. They want peace without prayer, success without struggle, healing without humility. But peace is not found in escape. It's found in alignment. When your purpose aligns with Allah's will, your life stops being chaotic. You stop feeling lost because you start living intentionally. That's why the Qur'an constantly reminds us that peace comes from remembrance, not from possessions, not from people, but from purpose rooted in faith. When a person knows their purpose, they no longer fear the unseen, because they realize that everything happening, whether seen or unseen, is part of Allah's plan. Even the tests from the jinn or the whispers of Shaitan become reminders, not obstacles. You start to see them as opportunities to prove your strength, to increase your remembrance, to sharpen your discipline. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start saying, what is Allah teaching me through this? That shift in mindset is the beginning of liberation. So many people today live in a constant state of inner chaos, minds filled with fear, hearts filled with doubt. They feel possessed by anxiety, by guilt, by overthinking. And they keep asking, why can't I find peace? The answer is simple, because they've given away their purpose. They've allowed the world to define them. They've allowed fear to dictate their choices. But once you bring your heart back to Allah, once you start living with the discipline of prayer, gratitude, patience, and self-control, you reclaim that purpose. You stop being reactive and start being proactive. You no longer chase, meaning you embody it. Even the strongest people can lose their sense of direction when they neglect discipline. You might wake up one day feeling disconnected, empty, restless, and that's the sign that your soul is craving realignment. Allah never leaves you without purpose, but sometimes your lack of discipline covers it like dust on a mirror. The purpose is still there, it's just buried beneath negligence, and the only way to uncover it is through effort, consistent, sincere effort. That's why the most powerful act you can do when you feel lost is not to overthink, but to act. Pray, read, reflect, keep going even when you feel nothing. Discipline is doing the right thing even when you don't feel inspired. That's what builds strength. When you discipline yourself, you begin to see that the true battle was never against the jinn, it was against your own heedlessness. The whispers lose meaning when you silence them with Dhikr. The fear loses strength when you confront it with faith. The exhaustion disappears when you remind yourself that life was never meant to be easy, but it was meant to be purposeful. You start to rise above your weaknesses, not because you are free from challenges, but because you finally understand their purpose. Every hardship becomes a training ground, every delay becomes a lesson, and every fear becomes a chance to strengthen your reliance on Allah. The disciplined believer doesn't seek to escape life's trials. They seek to excel through them. They understand that purpose gives meaning even to pain. When you wake up with purpose, your struggles no longer feel random. You start to see that the jinn, the whispers, the setbacks, all of it, are just parts of your journey toward Allah. They can distract you, but they can't define you. They can try to shake you, but they cannot destroy what Allah has fortified. Because when your heart beats for purpose, every hardship becomes bearable, and every fear becomes small. Do you know what it means to live with purpose? It means to live knowing that your life is a trust. Your time, your mind, your emotions, they are all amana. When you live undisciplined, you betray that trust. You waste what Allah gave you. But when you live with purpose, you honor it. You turn every action, every word, every breath into a form of worship. Even your fear becomes worship when it drives you to Allah. Even your pain becomes worship when you endure it with patience. Purpose transforms every experience into something sacred, and this is the real victory. To reclaim your power, not by controlling others, not by controlling the unseen, but by controlling yourself. To rise above fear by remembering who is truly in control. To live not as a victim of circumstance, but as a servant of the most merciful. That's where your true strength lies, not in dominance, but in discipline, not in control, but in surrender. When you live with this mindset, no darkness can break you, no whisper can confuse you, and no test can weaken you. Because you've already decided who you are, a believer with purpose. My brothers and sisters, Allah did not create you to be chased by fear. He created you to be followed by light. You are not meant to be enslaved by the unseen. You are meant to walk with certainty in the one who sees all. Your power doesn't come from what you can control. It comes from who you trust. And once you live with that purpose, you will find peace in every chaos, strength in every weakness, and guidance in every storm. The jinn may whisper, the world may distract, your heart may tremble, but the soul that is disciplined by purpose and anchored in faith never breaks. It bends, it weeps, it struggles, but it never breaks. Because its purpose is clear. To live for Allah, to strive for Him, and to trust Him through every unseen moment. And when that becomes your reality, fear disappears, confusion fades, and what remains is serenity, the serenity that comes from knowing that no power, seen or unseen, can shake the heart that lives with purpose for Allah.